You ever notice how a man can go through an entire day doing everything he's supposed to do, and still feel like he's losing somewhere no one can see? I'm not talking about the loud kind of failure, not the kind people point at. I mean the quiet one, the one that shows up at night, the one that waits until the lights are off and the room goes still, and suddenly it's just him and his thoughts, and that low hum in his chest he can't quite explain. He tells himself he's just tired, but it's not that simple, because tired people sleep, and he doesn't. He lies there, staring at the ceiling like it owes him answers. Phone in his hand, screen lighting up his face in that pale blue glow, scrolling through lives that look more put together than his feels. He knows he should stop. He even says it out loud sometimes, like that'll make a difference. One more minute. That's the deal he makes. But that minute stretches, bends, turns into something else entirely. Before he knows it, it's 12:43, then 1:26, then 2:11. And each time he checks the clock, there's this little stab of regret, not sharp enough to make him change, just enough to remind him he's doing it again. And that's the part that gets him. Not the lack of sleep, but the repetition. The feeling that he's stuck in a loop he didn't consciously choose. Because during the day, he's functional. He shows up. He answers emails. He nods in meetings. Maybe he even cracks a joke or two, gets a few laughs. On the outside, nothing looks broken. But nights don't lie. Nights strip all that away. There's no audience, no expectations to perform. Just a man and the weight he's been carrying without realizing it. Bills that never really go away, just shift from one month to the next. Responsibilities that pile up like dishes in a sink you keep meaning to get to. Conversations he replayed in his head on the drive home, wondering if he said the wrong thing, or didn't say enough. And somewhere between all of that, he lost the ability to just stop. That's the word nobody teaches you anymore. Stop. The world doesn't reward stopping. It rewards pushing, grinding, staying connected, being available. There's always another notification, another headline, another reason to keep your mind running like an engine that forgot how to cool down. And so he keeps feeding it. Late night snacks because it feels like he earned it. A little comfort after a long day. Something warm, something easy. But his body doesn't see comfort. It sees work. It gears up, shifts energy, starts processing when it should be slowing down. And he doesn't notice, because nobody ever sat him down and explained that the body isn't a switch you flip off. It's more like a dimmer, and if you never turn it down gradually, it just keeps burning. So there he is, lying in the dark, body tired but system wide awake, like a store that locked its doors but forgot to turn off the lights. And the mind is the worst part, because when everything else goes quiet, it gets loud. It brings up things he ignored during the day, little doubts, bigger fears, questions he doesn't have answers to. Is this it? Am I behind? When did it start feeling like this? They don't come all at once. They drip in, slow, steady, like water from a leaky faucet you can't quite fix. And he tries to drown them out, scrolls faster, watches something mindless, anything to avoid sitting with it. But that only pushes sleep further away. Because sleep, real sleep, doesn't come to a busy mind. It comes to a settled one, and nobody taught him how to settle. So he keeps negotiating with himself. Tomorrow I'll sleep earlier. Tomorrow I'll do better. Tomorrow becomes this imaginary version of him, more disciplined, more in control, more put together. But tomorrow has been carrying that promise for years now, and if you really look at it, tomorrow's getting tired too. That's the harsh part people don't say out loud. It's not that he lacks discipline, it's that he was never shown the mechanics of rest. Nobody explained that what you do at 10 p.m. matters more than what you do at midnight. That your brain needs cues, signals, a kind of permission to shut things down. Instead, he was taught how to start things. Start the day, start the job, start the hustle. But stopping, slowing down, letting the system power off the right way, that part got skipped. So now he's a man who can run all day, but doesn't know how to land. And every night becomes this quiet battle. Not dramatic, not loud, just persistent. A battle between what he knows he should do and what he ends up doing anyway. And the scariest part? It starts to feel normal. That's how patterns trap you, not by force, but by familiarity. After a while, the exhaustion becomes part of his identity. I'm just not a good sleeper. He says it casually, like it's a personality trait instead of a pattern he fell into. And people nod because they feel it too. Whole cities full of people walking around half-rested, running on caffeine and willpower, thinking that's just how life works now. Morning comes, alarm cuts through whatever shallow sleep he managed to get, and he drags himself up. There's no sense of recovery, no reset, just continuation. Like a phone you never fully charged, just kept plugging in for a few minutes here and there, hoping it'll last the day. He splashes water on his face, grabs a quick coffee, maybe skips breakfast or eats something on the go, and the cycle restarts. But here's the thing, deep down, he knows something's off. Not in a dramatic, life is falling apart way. More like a quiet awareness, like a song playing slightly out of tune in the background of his life. He can ignore it, but he can't unhear it. And every now and then, usually in those late night moments when the scrolling pauses for a second, he feels it clearly. That gap between how he's living and how he could be living. It doesn't shout, it doesn't demand, it just sits there, waiting. And maybe that's the real hook, the part that catches people if they're honest with themselves. It's not about sleep, not really. Sleep is just the symptom. The real issue is this. Somewhere along the way, he lost control over how his day ends. And when you don't control your ending, you don't really control your beginning either. Because mornings are just echoes of the night before, and until that changes, nothing else really does. Daniel wasn't a lazy man, not by any stretch of the word people like to throw around when they don't understand someone else's routine. He woke up when the alarm told him to, not when his body felt ready, and that alone already put him in a kind of quiet debt before the day even started. The room would still be dim, curtains barely holding back the early light, and his hand would reach out instinctively, not for the day, but for the phone. It was always the phone first. Not because he needed it, but because somewhere along the way, it became easier to face a screen than to face the weight of another day that looked almost identical to the one before. Notifications stacked up overnight, like unopened letters. Emails, messages, headlines, reminders of things he hadn't done yet. He'd scroll through them quickly, not really reading, just absorbing enough to feel slightly behind already. Then he'd sit up, rub his face, and take that first deep breath like someone about to step into traffic. Coffee came next. Always coffee. Strong, quick, no ceremony. He didn't savor it, didn't stand by the window or take a moment. It was fuel, nothing more. Something to push back the fog that clung to his mind like it didn't want to leave. Breakfast was optional, depending on how late he was running, which was more often than not. Some mornings it was just a piece of toast eaten standing up. Other mornings, nothing at all. He told himself he'd eat later, but later had a way of disappearing once the day picked up speed. The commute was its own kind of ritual. Cars lined up like they had nowhere else to be but there, inching forward, stopping, starting again. Red lights felt longer than they should, green lights too short. He'd tap the steering wheel sometimes, not out of impatience, but out of habit, like his body needed something to do while his mind wandered. Billboards passed by, repeating the same messages every day until they stopped meaning anything. A coffee shop on the corner he always thought about stopping at, but never did because there was never enough time. Or at least, that's what he told himself. By the time he got to work, he was already a little drained, like he'd spent energy just getting there. The office wasn't bad. It wasn't great either. It was just there. Rows of desks, low conversations, the hum of air conditioning that never quite matched the temperature people wanted. He'd sit down, open his laptop, and the day would begin properly. Emails first. Always emails. Some important, most not, but all demanding attention in the same flat tone. He'd respond, forward, flag, delete, repeat. Meetings would fill in the gaps, some useful, others just a way to move time from one part of the day to another. He'd nod when appropriate, speak when needed, but rarely felt like anything truly moved forward. It was motion without momentum, like walking on a treadmill that tracked steps but didn't take you anywhere. Lunch came and went in a similar blur. Sometimes he'd eat at his desk, eyes still on the screen, barely tasting what he was chewing. Other days he'd step out, grab something quick, sit somewhere for a few minutes, but even then his mind stayed plugged into work, running through tasks, deadlines, small worries that stacked up quietly. Afternoon dipped into that familiar lull, where focus thinned out and everything took a little longer than it should. Another coffee maybe, or something sweet to push through. By the time the clock edged toward the end of the workday, he felt like he'd done a lot, but couldn't clearly point to what actually mattered. Then came the drive back. Traffic again. Same roads, same stops, same thoughts circling like they hadn't found a place to land. This was usually when the replay started. Conversations from earlier. Things he could have said better. Moments he second-guessed. Not big mistakes, just small ones that stuck longer than they deserved. He'd get home, drop his keys somewhere without thinking. Shoes off, shirt slightly wrinkled now, and there'd be this brief pause. A moment where the day ended, but the night hadn't really begun yet. That space was important, but he didn't know what to do with it. So he filled it. TV on, background noise to keep the silence from getting too loud. Maybe he'd sit down for a bit, scroll again, check what he already checked in the morning. It wasn't about information anymore, it was just habit. Dinner came later than it should. Not planned, not prepared, just decided in the moment based on what felt easiest. Takeout more often than he liked to admit. Something heavy, something filling. It gave a sense of comfort, like a reward for getting through the day, even if the day didn't feel like it deserved celebrating. He'd eat while watching something, barely noticing how fast it disappeared. And then came that stretch of time people like to call free time. But it didn't feel free. It felt like leftover time. Time without structure, without intention. He'd sit there, remote in one hand, phone in the other, flipping between distraction and distraction, never fully engaged in either. Hours slipped by quietly, not wasted in a dramatic sense, just dissolved. And this is where the pattern really settled in, because nothing told his body the day was ending. No clear shift, no signal. Lights stayed bright, screens stayed on, mind stayed active. He didn't slow down, he just delayed stopping. And when it got late enough, when his eyes started to burn a little and his body finally pushed back, he'd decide it was time. Not because he prepared for sleep, but because he ran out of energy to stay awake. He'd brush his teeth quickly, sometimes skip it if he felt too tired, change into something comfortable, and collapse onto the bed like it was the finish line of a long race. But the race never really ended, because the moment he lay down, everything he ignored started to surface. Thoughts he pushed aside earlier came back, clearer now, louder. His body, still processing that late meal, stayed active beneath the surface. His brain, still lit up from hours of screen exposure, didn't get the message that it was time to shut down. So he'd lie there, turning from one side to the other, adjusting the pillow, pulling the blanket up, kicking it off. Small movements that felt like progress, but didn't lead anywhere. And after a while, almost out of reflex, his hand would reach for the phone again, just to check something, just for a minute. But that minute reopened the door his body needed closed. Light hit his eyes again, mind engaged again. Sleep moved further away without making a sound. And this wasn't a one-night thing, this was every night. A routine built not by choice, but by repetition. Small decisions stacking up until they formed a pattern so familiar it felt normal. He didn't question it much because it didn't look like a problem from the outside. He was functioning, paying bills, showing up, living what most people would call a regular life. But inside, there was a quiet mismatch. His body asking for rest, and his habits denying it. And the strange part was, if you asked him, he'd say he wanted better sleep. He'd say he was tired of feeling tired. He'd even look up advice sometimes, read a few tips, maybe try one or two for a night. But without understanding the bigger picture, those small changes never stuck, because his nights weren't just missing one piece. They were missing a whole sequence, a way to move from doing to being still, from noise to quiet, from motion to rest. Instead, every evening was just an extension of the day, stretched out until his body couldn't keep up anymore. And when you live like that long enough, you stop expecting anything different. You start believing this is just how it works. That adulthood comes with this constant, low-grade exhaustion, this sense of never quite catching up with yourself. But deep down, under all the habits and distractions, there was still that awareness, that something about this rhythm didn't sit right. That maybe, just maybe, the problem wasn't how hard he worked during the day, but how little he allowed himself to truly stop at night. The turning point didn't come with a big moment, no dramatic breakdown, no sudden realization that hit like a lightning strike. It came quietly, almost in a way most people would miss if they weren't paying attention. It was a Tuesday, nothing special about it. The kind of day that blends into every other weekday without leaving a mark. Daniel got home a little earlier than usual. Traffic had loosened for once, and there was this strange pocket of time sitting in front of him. Not planned, not earned, just there. He dropped his keys on the table like always, loosened his collar, walked into the kitchen, opened the fridge, stared at what was inside without really seeing it. Same routine, same autopilot. But then he paused, not because something told him to, but because for a second, he didn't feel like rushing into the next thing. That was new. Usually, his evenings were a straight line from one habit to another, like stepping stones he never questioned. But that night, the line broke. He closed the fridge without grabbing anything and leaned back against the counter, arms folded, just standing there. The apartment was quiet, quieter than he remembered it being. No TV, no background noise yet, just the faint hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic outside. And in that quiet, something shifted. Not outside, but in the way he noticed things. He became aware of how tired he actually felt. Not the surface level kind that coffee fixes, but the deeper kind. The one sitting behind his eyes, in his shoulders, in the way his breath felt slightly heavier than it should. And for once, he didn't brush it off. He stayed with it. That's where the change began. Not in action, but in attention. Because up until that point, Daniel had been treating his exhaustion like a problem to push through, something to manage, something to outwork. But standing there in that quiet kitchen, he started to see it differently. It wasn't just about being tired, it was about never actually stopping. And that thought didn't come as a clear sentence. It came more like a feeling, like something clicking into place without needing explanation. He moved to the couch slowly, sat down, elbows on his knees, hands loosely clasped, staring at the floor. No phone in his hand this time. That alone felt unfamiliar, like he'd left something important behind, even though he hadn't. Minutes passed, maybe more than he realized. And instead of reaching for distraction, he let his mind wander, not in the chaotic way it usually did at night, but in a slower, more deliberate way. He started connecting things. The late meals, the endless scrolling, the way his body felt wired even when he was exhausted, the restless nights, the heavy mornings. It wasn't random, it was a pattern. And more importantly, it was a pattern he had been reinforcing without realizing it. That's when the real twist settled in. Not as a shocking revelation, but as a simple truth that felt almost obvious once he saw it. His problem wasn't sleep, it was everything that happened before sleep. For years, he had been focusing on the last moment of the day, the act of lying down, closing his eyes, expecting his body to just switch off, like a machine. But his body wasn't a machine. It was a system, one that responded to cues, to timing, to consistency. And he had been sending it the wrong signals over and over again. Late-night eating wasn't just a harmless habit. It was telling his body to stay active when it should be slowing down. The constant screen exposure wasn't just entertainment. It was flooding his brain with light and stimulation at the exact time it needed darkness and calm. The lack of any real transition between day and night wasn't just a lifestyle choice. It was confusion for his internal clock. A clock that relied on rhythm, not randomness. He leaned back into the couch, exhaled slowly, and for the first time, he didn't feel frustrated about it. He felt curious, because if the problem wasn't who he was, but what he was doing, then maybe it was something he could actually change. Not overnight, not perfectly, but gradually. That idea sat with him for a while, settling in like a weight that wasn't heavy, just present. And then something else surfaced, something even more uncomfortable than the realization itself. He thought about how long he had been living like this. Not weeks, not months, but years. Years of telling himself he just needed to try harder, be more disciplined, push through. Years of blaming himself for something he didn't fully understand. And that's where the second layer of the twist came in, the one that hit a little deeper. It wasn't just that he had the wrong habits, it was that he had the wrong narrative about those habits. He had been treating himself like the problem, when in reality, he had been following a system that was never designed for rest. Modern life had trained him to stay connected, stay productive, stay stimulated, right up until the moment he expected to fall asleep. And when his body didn't cooperate, he took it as a personal failure. Sitting there in that dimly lit room, he started to see how backwards that was. It wasn't that he was bad at sleeping. He had just never been taught how to prepare for it. That realization didn't fix anything immediately, but it changed the way he looked at his nights. Instead of seeing them as the end of the day, he started seeing them as the beginning of recovery. And recovery, he realized, wasn't something that happened automatically. It had to be allowed, supported, even protected. He stood up after a while, not with urgency, but with a kind of quiet intention, walked back to the kitchen, poured himself a glass of water, drank it slowly this time instead of in a rush. He checked the clock, still earlier than his usual dinner time. For a moment, he considered ordering something, falling back into the pattern, but the thought didn't feel as automatic as it used to. He hesitated, and in that hesitation, there was choice. That was new, because before, his evenings were a series of reactions. Now, even if just slightly, they felt like decisions. He didn't suddenly transform into someone with perfect habits that night. He didn't cook a healthy meal, didn't meditate for an hour, didn't follow a structured routine. But he did something small that mattered more than it seemed. He paid attention. He noticed the signals his body was sending instead of ignoring them. He recognized the gap between what he was doing and what he actually needed. And once you see that gap clearly, it's hard to unsee it. Later that night, when he eventually lay down, things weren't perfect. His mind still wandered. His body still took time to settle. But there was a difference, subtle but real. He wasn't fighting sleep the same way. He understood, at least partially, why it had been so hard before. And that understanding softened something in him. It replaced frustration with patience, blame with awareness. And that's the part most people overlook when they talk about change. It's not the new habit that shifts things first. It's the new perspective. The moment you stop seeing yourself as broken and start seeing the system you're operating in as flawed. From there, everything else becomes possible. Not easy, not instant, but possible. And for Daniel, that quiet Tuesday evening, sitting in a dim apartment with nothing but his own thoughts for company, was the moment that possibility first showed up. Not loud, not dramatic, just steady, like a door that had always been there, finally noticed for what it was. That night didn't fix him, not in the way people like to imagine change happens. No sudden clarity, no clean break from the old habits, just a small shift that most people wouldn't even notice if they were looking from the outside. But inside, it felt different, quieter, in a way that didn't demand attention. And over the next few days, Daniel didn't try to become a new person. He didn't wake up with a strict plan or a list of rules taped to his wall. He just carried that awareness with him, like something fragile he didn't want to drop. And it started showing up in the smallest moments, the kind you'd normally rush past without thinking, like standing in the kitchen after work, keys still in his hand, deciding whether to order food or wait. And for the first time, he noticed the feeling behind that decision. Not hunger exactly, more like fatigue dressed up as appetite. And instead of reacting immediately, he paused. Not long, just enough to ask himself a question he never asked before. What do I actually need right now? And the answer wasn't always clear. Sometimes it still led him to the same takeout, the same routine. But other times, it didn't. And those small differences began to add up, slowly, unevenly, like drops of water collecting in a place that had been dry for too long. He started eating a little earlier, not perfectly, not every day, but enough for his body to notice. And at night, something subtle began to change. The heaviness in his stomach wasn't as loud. His body didn't feel like it was still working overtime when it should have been winding down. And then there was the phone, that constant presence, that quiet habit he never questioned. He didn't throw it away, didn't make some dramatic rule about never using it again. He just started putting it down a little earlier, sometimes leaving it on the table instead of bringing it to bed. And the first few nights felt strange, like he was missing something, like there was an empty space he didn't know how to fill. And in that space, his thoughts came back. Not all at once, but enough to make him uncomfortable, enough to make him want to reach for the screen again. But he didn't always give in, not every time. And that mattered, because in those moments, he started learning something he had avoided for years, how to sit with his own mind without immediately trying to escape it. And it wasn't peaceful at first, not at all. It was messy, scattered, sometimes even frustrating. But underneath all of that, there was a kind of honesty that hadn't been there before. Like he was finally hearing himself clearly without all the noise layered on top. And one evening, after a long day that didn't go particularly well, nothing dramatic, just a series of small things that didn't quite land right, he found himself sitting on the edge of his bed, a notebook in his hand, staring at a blank page. And for a moment, he almost laughed. because it felt unnecessary, almost pointless, writing things down at the end of the day like it would change anything. But then he remembered that feeling from before, that quiet realization that his mind had been carrying too much without ever putting anything down. So he started small, just a few lines. What went right, what didn't. Nothing polished, no attempt to make it sound meaningful, just the truth as it came out. And something about that act, simple as it was, created a kind of space in his head, like opening a window in a room that had been closed for too long. The air shifted, not dramatically, but enough to feel. And he noticed that when he lay down that night, his thoughts didn't circle as tightly as they used to. They still came, but they didn't stick in the same way. It was like they had somewhere else to go now, somewhere outside of him, and that made it easier to let them pass. And then there was the shower, something he used to rush through without thinking, just another task before bed. But now he stayed in it a little longer, letting the warm water hit his shoulders, his back, feeling the tension he didn't even realize he was holding begin to loosen. And when he stepped out, there was that slight drop in temperature, that subtle shift in his body that he had never paid attention to before. But now it felt like a signal, like his body saying, "This is where we slow down." And for once, he listened. He didn't rush back into bright lights or loud distractions. He let the evening settle, dimmed the lights without making a big deal out of it, moved through his space more quietly, more deliberately, and the night started to take on a different rhythm. Not structured, not perfect, but intentional in a way they hadn't been before. And with that came something he hadn't felt in a long time. Not excitement, not even happiness in the way people usually describe it, but a kind of steadiness, like his system was finally getting a chance to breathe. And the mornings didn't transform overnight. He still woke up groggy some days, still reached for coffee out of habit. But there were moments, small ones, where he noticed a difference, a little more clarity, a little less resistance getting out of bed. Like the gap between sleep and waking wasn't as heavy as it used to be. And those moments mattered, not because they were dramatic, but because they were real. And they gave him something he hadn't had before, evidence that change was possible, not in theory, not in some ideal version of himself, but in his actual everyday life. And that's what kept him going. Not motivation, not discipline in the strict sense, but a quiet understanding that his nights were no longer something that just happened to him. They were something he was slowly learning to shape. And in that process, he began to see something deeper, something that went beyond sleep itself. He realized how much of his life had been lived on autopilot, reacting instead of choosing, filling every gap with noise instead of allowing space. And it wasn't just about fixing a routine. It was about reclaiming those small moments that most people overlook. The minutes before bed, the pause after a long day, the decision to sit in silence instead of reaching for distraction. And those moments, simple as they were, started to change the way he experienced everything else. Because when you learn how to slow down at the end of the day, you start to notice how fast you've been moving through the rest of it. And that awareness, it stays with you. It follows you into your mornings, your work, your conversations. It changes the way you show up, not all at once, not perfectly, but gradually, like a tide that shifts without asking for permission. And somewhere along the way, Daniel stopped seeing his nights as a problem to solve, and started seeing them as a space to return to, a place where he could let go of the weight he carried during the day, instead of dragging it into his sleep. And that didn't make life easier, didn't remove the responsibilities, the stress, the endless list of things that needed his attention. But it gave him something he didn't have before, a way to reset, to recover, to start again without feeling like he was already behind. And that's where the real change lived. Not in perfection, not in rigid routines, but in those quiet, consistent choices that no one else sees. The ones that don't look impressive, don't get talked about, but slowly, steadily, reshape the way a person moves through their own life, one night at a time. And here's the part nobody really says out loud, not in a way that sticks anyway. Change like this doesn't announce itself. It doesn't knock on your door and tell you your life is about to feel different. It just slips in quietly, through the smallest decisions, the ones that don't look important when you're making them, like turning off a light a little earlier, like putting your phone face down instead of carrying it with you to bed, like choosing to sit in silence for a few minutes, even when your mind keeps trying to pull you back into noise. And most people, They miss it, not because they're incapable, but because they're waiting for something bigger, something more obvious, something that feels like a clear before and after moment they can point to and say, "That's when everything changed." But life doesn't really work like that, not in the long run. It works in layers, in patterns that repeat until you notice them. And once you do, you get this choice, not a loud one, not a dramatic one, just a quiet fork in the road that shows up night after night, asking you the same question in different forms. Are you going to keep doing what's easy, or start doing what actually helps you recover? And the tricky part is, what's easy usually feels better in the moment. It gives you that quick release, that sense of comfort after a long day, the late night meal, the endless scroll, the background noise that keeps your thoughts from catching up to you. It all feels like relief, but it's borrowed relief, the kind that comes with a cost you don't pay immediately. You pay it in the morning, in the heaviness behind your eyes, in the way your body feels like it never fully shut down, in the quiet frustration of starting another day already a step behind. And if you repeat that cycle long enough, it starts to shape the way you see yourself. You begin to believe that you're just someone who's always tired, someone who can't quite get it together, someone who needs more coffee, more willpower, more something, without realizing that the issue isn't what you're lacking, it's what you're allowing to continue without question. And that's where the real shift happens. Not when you force yourself into a perfect routine, not when you suddenly become disciplined overnight, but when you start paying attention to the patterns you've been living inside of, when you begin to see how your nights are built, piece by piece, decision by decision. And once you see that clearly, something changes. You can't unsee it. You start noticing the moments where you have a choice, even if it's a small one, even if it feels insignificant at the time, like choosing to eat a little earlier instead of pushing it late into the night, like dimming the lights instead of keeping everything bright and active, like taking a few minutes to write things down instead of carrying them into your sleep. And those choices, they don't feel powerful in the moment. They feel almost too simple, too basic to matter. But that's exactly why they work, because they're sustainable, because they don't require you to become someone else. They just ask you to show up a little differently in the moments that already exist in your life. And over time, those moments start to connect. They form a rhythm, a kind of quiet structure that your body begins to recognize. And once your body recognizes it, everything starts to shift in ways you don't have to force. Your mind settles a little easier. Your sleep comes a little more naturally. Your mornings feel a little less like a battle. And none of it happens all at once. None of it is perfect. There are still nights where you fall back into old habits, still mornings where you feel off, still days where everything feels heavier than it should. But the difference is, you're no longer stuck in it without awareness. You know what's happening. You know what led you there. And that knowledge gives you something most people overlook: the ability to adjust, to reset, to try again without turning it into a judgment about who you are. And that's where this whole thing becomes less about sleep and more about how you live. Because when you learn how to close your day properly, you start to understand how much of your life depends on those quiet endings, the way you shut things down, the way you let go, the way you prepare yourself to rest instead of just collapsing into it. And from that place, something deeper begins to grow. Not just better sleep, but a better relationship with your own time, your own energy, your own limits. You start to respect the idea that you can't run endlessly without paying a price. That recovery isn't a luxury, it's a requirement. And the more you honor that, the more stable everything else becomes. Your focus sharpens, your patience stretches a little further, your reactions soften, and you begin to move through your days with a bit more clarity, a bit more control. Not because life got easier, but because you're no longer carrying the same level of exhaustion into every moment. And that's the part people don't talk about enough. How much of what we struggle with during the day is actually decided the night before. How many of our bad moods, our lack of focus, our short tempers, our constant need for stimulation, all trace back to the way we end our day. And once you see that connection, it changes the way you look at your nights. They're no longer just the leftover hours after work. They become something more intentional, more valuable, a space where you set yourself up for everything that comes next. And the truth is, you already have that space. It's already there in your routine. In those hours before you go to bed, the only question is how you choose to use it, whether you fill it with noise and distraction, or shape it into something that actually supports you. And no one can make that choice for you. No video, no advice, no system can do it on your behalf. It always comes back to you, to those quiet moments where you decide what the rest of your night is going to look like. And that decision, it's happening again tonight, just like it did yesterday, just like it will tomorrow. And maybe you won't get it perfect. Maybe you'll slip back into old patterns. Maybe you'll tell yourself, just one more time, and mean it. But the difference now is that you're aware. You know what that one more time leads to. You know how it feels the next morning. And that awareness, it's enough to start with. It's enough to create a small shift. And sometimes, that's all it takes. Not a complete overhaul, not a perfect routine. Just one different choice in a moment that used to run on autopilot. And if you keep doing that, if you keep showing up for those small decisions, something builds, something steady, something that doesn't rely on motivation or mood. And over time, you'll look back and realize that your nights feel different, your mornings feel different, and more importantly, you feel different. Not like a completely new person, but like a version of yourself that finally learned how to rest. And maybe that's the real question worth sitting with. Not, how do I fix everything? But something simpler, something more honest. What am I going to do with my night, tonight? And if this kind of conversation speaks to you, if it feels less like advice and more like something you've been quietly noticing in your own life, then stay around. Not for quick fixes, not for perfect answers, but for more of these moments where we slow things down and actually look at what's going on beneath the surface. Because sometimes, that's where the real change begins, not in doing more, but in finally seeing clearly what you've been doing all along, and deciding, little by little, to do it differently.